They say weddings bring families closer. I used to believe that too. That morning, I pressed the soft pink dress I had saved for years. I baked banana bread, the one Owen used to devour in 2 bites as a boy. I even wore the old cardigan with tiny pearl buttons. Mark once said made me look like a 50s sitcom mom. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a mother quietly proud, quietly hopeful. I had told myself the wedding might be a beginning again, a chance to be part of my son's life in a way that hadn't felt real in years. But when I arrived at the venue, no one saved me a seat near Owen. No one even glanced twice when I stepped into the room. The name tag the greeter handed me read simply Sylvia. No title, no ribbon, just Sylvia. I clipped it on. My hand trembled. Inside the room glowed with golden lights and polished laughter. Laughter that didn't belong to me. I saw Owen near the front talking to Lauren, surrounded by people I didn't know. Colleagues, friends from college, bridesmaids with polished smiles. His eyes never searched the crowd for mine. A young man in a headset waved me toward a back table. I walked alone. My heels clicked louder than I wanted. The table card read only Sylvia, as if I were just another guest, someone Owen had once known but barely remembered. I sat between a man who sold home insurance and a woman who raised alpacas in Vermont. They were kind, but they talked around me. I nodded, pretended to sip my champagne, and listened as strangers toasted to a future I no longer recognized. When someone asked when the groom's mom would speak, Lauren laughed and said, "Maybe later." The moment passed, and with it, something in me went quiet. Not angry, not bitter. Just still. I looked around the room and realized something simple and devastating. I was no longer part of the story. I was background. A name card on a table. A week passed after the wedding. No messages, no phone calls, not even a thank you. I told myself they were busy settling into married life, unpacking, maybe even away on a honeymoon. But silence has a weight. It doesn't arrive all at once. It settles like dust, slow and stubborn, clinging to the places you still hope someone might care. Then the phone rang. It was Owen. "Hey, Mom," he said casually. "Thought maybe we could do dinner. Just the two of us. Lauren's going out with friends." I paused, the way he said it, like he was reading from a line someone else had written. Still, I smiled. Of course. I'd love to. I baked a fresh batch of oatmeal cookies, his favorite. The smell alone took me back to when he was 6, tiny hands covered in flour, his giggle echoing through the kitchen. I wore the cardigan from the day I brought him home from the hospital. It was a bit faded now, the sleeves soft at the wrists. It felt like armor, not to protect, but to remember who I'd been. His new house was tidy, the kind that looks like a page from a catalog. Matching porch lights, brushed nickel door handles. A doorbell camera blinked red as I stepped up. Efficient? Precise? He answered quickly, gave me a polite hug that didn't quite land on my shoulders. "The kitchen's this way," he said. I followed. There was no smell of food, no pans on the stove, no simmering sauce, no garlic in the air, just paper. A table set for 2, plates, wine glasses, and a neat stack of documents. Labeled, tabbed, a pen placed perfectly on top. Something turned cold in my chest. Owen poured the wine, casual as ever. "It's just a standard form," he said. "Power of attorney stuff. You know, in case anything ever happens." I didn't say anything. He smiled like it was no big deal. "Everyone's doing it, Mom, just for peace of mind. It would make things easier." I sat, looked at the top page. Durable power of attorney, immediate, full authority, real estate, financial, medical decisions, no expiration. I flipped to the back. His signature line was already filled in, mine blank. The air in the room felt still, too still. I looked up. "There's no dinner, is there?" He blinked. "Sorry." You invited me for dinner, but there's no food, just papers. He laughed awkwardly. I didn't think it had to be formal. I placed my hands on the table gently. No, it didn't, but it had to be honest. He shifted. I just want to make sure you're taken care of. The word echoed. Taken care of. I nodded slowly. I'll take it home. Read it properly. He smiled, but his eyes flicked to the pen. I picked up the cookies. I brought these for you. Oh, thanks, he said, distracted. We talked for a few more minutes. Whether A Neighbor's Dog, a show I didn't watch. When I stood, he hugged me again, lighter, almost reluctant. I drove home in silence. My hands on the steering wheel felt unfamiliar. The foil-wrapped cookies untouched in the passenger seat. At home, I didn't take off my coat. I just sat at the kitchen table staring at the stack of legal words in my hand. Something had shifted, and this time, I knew it wasn't temporary. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed fully dressed, my shoes still on, coat unzipped halfway. The document packet sat untouched on the kitchen table, but I felt its weight in my chest. The wine from Owen's house still burned quietly in the back of my throat. His words echoed, "It's just easier this way." Around 2 a.m., I got up and went downstairs to the basement. The air there was colder, dense with the smell of wood and old paint. My knees ached as I descended the creaky stairs, each step loud in the silence. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I saw the metal box. It had sat there for years, tucked behind paint cans and a bag of old rags. Mark used to keep his tools and documents in it. After he died, I never had the heart to open it. But that night, I did. The hinges creaked like a whisper. Inside were neatly labeled folders, every label in Mark's careful handwriting. He had always been organized, always thinking 3 steps ahead, especially when I wasn't. At the bottom was an envelope with my name on it. Just Sylvia. No instructions, no urgency. Just my name in blue ink. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter inside was short, barely a paragraph, but every word hit with precision. If you're reading this, something's changed. You probably won't tell anyone you're struggling, but I know you. This is for you to make sure you're never left without a choice. Don't tell Owen. Not because I don't love him, but because the world has a way of twisting things. You need to be protected, not persuaded. I read it 3 times. Then I opened the folders. Inside, 2 investment portfolios in my name, stock options, a trust account tied to a property in Texas, a life insurance policy that had quietly grown over the years, the total value over $7 million. I sat there for a long time on the cold floor, the metal box open beside me. The furnace clicked on upstairs, but I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. What I felt was power. Quiet, undeniable, buried power. Mark had seen what I hadn't, what I refused to see. And he gave me something no one else ever had choice. The next morning, I didn't take off my shoes. I just sat there in the kitchen, hands still on my lap, eyes on the envelope that contained Mark's legacy and Owen's quiet betrayal. For hours, I didn't move. The clock above the stove ticked like it was counting something I'd already lost: time, trust, purpose. And then I stood up. I pulled out the drawer beside the fridge and found it an old birthday card from years ago, yellowing at the edges. On the back was a phone number, Carol. We hadn't spoken in almost a decade, not since her husband passed, but I remembered something she once told me over coffee when we were both young wives trying to find our place in the world. The quietest women often leave the most permanent marks. I dialed the number with hands that didn't shake. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was older but strong. No hesitation. When I told her what had happened, about the papers, about the box, about Mark, she didn't gasp or ask why I waited. She just said, "Come over. Bring everything. No fuss. Just coffee and clarity. I drove to her small house across town, neat sunlit, filled with the scent of dried lavender and slow wisdom. She wore a quilted vest and soft jeans and greeted me like no time had passed at all. We sat at her kitchen table. I laid everything out: Mark's documents, the trust accounts, the letter. Then, hesitating, I added Owen's paperwork. She read everything, quietly, page by page. Her eyes scanned with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime reading things too late on behalf of women who had waited too long. When she finished, she closed the folder and looked at me. "You have more power than you think." She tapped Mark's documents. This is gold, protected, structured, yours, but only if you keep it that way." She asked if I wanted to establish a trust. I nodded. "Yes." "Anyone to name?" she asked gently. "No one," I said. "Not yet. Maybe never." She didn't press. She only nodded. Then we turned to Owen's papers. She read them again, slower this time. Her expression didn't change, but her voice did. These weren't written to care for someone, she said. They were written to absorb them. Together we rewrote everything. Carol created a private trust under my full control. She added medical clauses, provisions that required 2 independent physicians to confirm mental incapacity before any authority could be transferred. She wrapped every line in protection like silk around a blade. Then she handed me the pen. I signed. Not because I was angry, but because I had finally learned that boundaries aren't walls. They are maps. Maps back to yourself. The invitation came in a text. "Let's do dinner again. Just us. No papers. Promise. Owen." I stared at the message for a long time. No mom, no sorry. Just an offer wrapped in casual punctuation, pretending not to carry the weight of our last encounter. I didn't respond immediately. I needed time not to plan my response, but to center myself. By evening, I replied with one word: "Sure." What he didn't know was that I wouldn't be coming alone. Carol parked a block away. We agreed she'd stay in the car unless I called. She understood. This wasn't a battle, it was a boundary. And boundaries are sometimes best witnessed in silence. I arrived right on time. Owen opened the door in a casual button-down barefoot, as if the lack of shoes could soften the undertone of manipulation. The house smelled of garlic and roasted vegetables. For a moment, I wondered if this time he had meant it. Maybe there would actually be dinner. Maybe this was real. We sat. There were candles on the table, bread, wine, even plates already filled. It looked perfect. But my eyes went to the side table. Another stack of papers, different color folder, still clipped, still waiting. Owen made small talk at first. "You been reading anything good?" he asked, sipping wine. I told him about a novel from the library. He nodded politely, didn't ask what it was about. His eyes kept drifting to the folder. Then he reached for it. He laid it between us like a deck of cards. I spoke with the friend in elder law. He began, voice slow, careful. They recommended a simplified structure, not a power of attorney, just provisional management. If you ever need help. That's all. He smiled, sliding it toward me, and I didn't touch it. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out my own envelope. I placed it gently on top of his. Silence. He blinked, unfolded it, read the top line. Notice of trust execution, all assets transferred, and my signature bold and final. His face didn't change immediately, but his jaw tightened just slightly. His eyes blinked faster. He looked like someone who had taken a confident step, only to find the floor gone beneath them. I spoke slowly. "I appreciate your concern. I know the world can be uncertain, but I've taken care of things. Properly. With legal protection. With witnesses. Everything is final." He swallowed. "Did someone help you?" I nodded. Yes, a friend. Someone who cares about me, not my money. He paused, fingers tapping once against the edge of the table. You didn't have to be so formal. I met his eyes. I had to be clear. The tension was thick, not loud, not messy, just sharp, like a room holding its breath. That's when Carol stepped in. She entered quietly, smiled, introduced herself politely. Her presence wasn't dramatic, just firm. I think that's all for tonight, she said kindly. We'll be going now. I stood, gathered my coat, and walked to the door. Owen didn't stop me. He just stood there holding the paper that said what I couldn't say out loud. You don't get to manage me. Not anymore. Outside, the night air was crisp. As we walked back to Carol's car, I felt no fear, no anger, just a new kind of peace. Not silence, certainty. The next morning came colder than the forecast promised. Not the sharp cold of January, but the creeping kind, the one that seeps into your bones before you realize it's there. I wrapped myself in a shawl and sat at the kitchen table, a glass of orange juice, untouched beside me. At 10:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. One message. From Owen. You made this harder than it had to be. No greeting, no name. Just that sentence. I stared at the screen for a long time. What surprised me wasn't the words. It was how unsurprised I was. I turned the phone face down. The toast I had made had gone cold. The juice no longer looked refreshing. There was no follow-up message, no apology, no explanation. And I knew in the way a mother knows that the words weren't about concern. They were about control. He hadn't been trying to help me. He'd been trying to manage me. Later that afternoon, I walked into the garage to check some old boxes. Maybe I needed something to do with my hands. Maybe I was searching for a past that still belonged to me. One of the boxes held photo albums. I pulled one out. Dust danced in the air like a ghost. I flipped to a page from a Christmas long ago. Owen was 5 cheeks flushed from playing in the snow, holding up a toy truck with both hands. His smile was enormous, gap-toothed, and wild, full of joy and mischief. I used to frame that image in my mind every time I felt tired, every time I was scared. But now, looking at it again, I saw something different. A boy who always got what he wanted. Not because he demanded it, because we gave it to him. Mark and I, out of love, out of sacrifice, out of guilt, sometimes had made things easy for him. Too easy. And somewhere along the way, he'd stopped seeing what was given as a gift. He saw it as entitlement. Later that day, another text came, this time from Lauren. Sorry things got tense. We were just trying to plan responsibly. If you ever want to talk, I'm around. Then a line that stayed with me longer than it should have. You raised a strong son. We just wanted to support his future. I read it twice. On the surface, it was polished, polite. But underneath, I heard it clearly. You had your time. Let go. I didn't respond, not out of spite, not out of pride, but because sometimes no response is the clearest response. That night, I poured the juice down the sink, not in anger, but because it had gone cold, and I didn't want to drink anything that had lost its warmth. I moved at the end of February, just before the snow gave up its fight, and the sidewalks turned from white to gray. I didn't tell Owen. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave a note or a forwarding address. I wasn't trying to vanish. I just needed something different. The new house wasn't far, still by the lake, but tucked deeper into a quieter street. Smaller, older, the kind with creaky stairs and a crooked mailbox. A place where the walls knew how to hold silence gently. I brought only what mattered, Mark's photo, a few worn recipe cards, my books, the blue kettle, and the ceramic owl that never scared a single bird but made me smile. Most mornings I walked to the library on Main Street, not because I needed books, but because I loved the sound of pages turning. It reminded me that stories could still move even after chapters closed. I started helping at the front desk unofficially. I'd shelve returns, guide someone to the biography section, restock bookmarks. Small things. But they made me feel visible again. That's where I first saw them. The women. Not loud, not dramatic. They came in quietly one by one with thermoses and tote bags. Some read, some wrote, some simply stared out the window as if waiting for something they couldn't name. There was Helen, who once ran a diner and now quilted from her late husband's shirts. June, who brought peppermint tea in a thermos with her sister's initials on it. And Margot, who carried a cane but only used it once she reached the door, her quiet rebellion against time. We didn't become friends right away. There were no grand introductions, no shared traumas spilled over coffee, just nods and silence, and the quiet agreement that we didn't need to explain what we had lost. What we needed was a place to still exist. One afternoon, Margot asked if I wanted to help with the old garden bed behind the library. I said yes before I even looked at it. The soil was hard, packed down by seasons of neglect, but we turned it, row by row, hands in dirt, knees aching, no small talk, just the rhythm of planting. We planted tomatoes, basil, and sunflowers just to be defiant. We called it the quiet corner. That little patch of earth changed something in me. Not dramatically, not loudly, but deeply. We didn't talk much about our children. When we did, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with recognition, like showing someone a scar and not needing to explain how it got there, only that it healed. What we shared wasn't grief. It was clarity. It was a Saturday morning. The sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. I had just finished sweeping the porch of my little home when I noticed the car parked at the curb. Not a delivery. Not the mailman. A familiar shape. Still, waiting. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time. I didn't move. Eventually the door opened and Owen stepped out. He wasn't dressed like the last time I saw him. No button-down, no pressed jeans, just a gray hoodie slightly wrinkled, and in his hand an envelope, plain, white, slightly creased. He didn't walk to the door. He sat on the wooden steps the same way he used to when waiting for dinner, as a boy back-hunched, elbows on knees, face turned downward. I watched from inside. I opened the door after a while, walked down slowly, not with fear, not with anger, just carefully. I stopped a few feet from him. He looked up. Same eyes, quieter. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't say anything. I didn't see what I was doing. I thought I was helping, but I wasn't. I let the money speak louder than love. He looked down at the envelope in his hand. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. What it cost." I didn't reach for the envelope. Instead, I sat beside him, not close, not far. Just enough for the porch to creak under both our weight. I looked straight ahead. The wind brushed the railings. A bird landed nearby, then flew away again without acknowledging us. "I forgive you," I said. He turned his head slightly. "But forgiveness doesn't come with a key," I added. "Some doors once closed need time, or they don't open at all." He nodded, didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded. After a moment, he stood up, placed the envelope beside me on the step, and walked back to his car. I didn't call after him. I didn't wave. I sat, still, not waiting, not grieving, just breathing. Because sometimes the first step back isn't walking toward someone, it's learning how to sit still, without being pulled under. The first snow came early that year, thin and soft like it wasn't sure it wanted to stay. It dusted the rooftops, the mailbox, the crooked fence. I stood by the window watching it fall. The house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that aches. Not anymore. Just still. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't boil the kettle. I just stood there, hands resting on the windowsill, watching the world pause outside. A part of me felt as if something inside had finally stopped running. Later that morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a warm mug in my hand. Not because I needed the tea, but because I needed something to hold. And then the phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. This time, I picked up. Too late. A single message appeared. From Owen. Hey, I know I've said too much, or not enough. I miss the way things used to be. Maybe we could talk. Just talk. That was it. No apology, no request, no anger. Just a thread dangling. I listened to the message again. Not to what he said, but how he said it. And that was what broke me. Because it didn't sound like my son. Not the boy who once ran barefoot through the hallway yelling for cookies. Not the teenager who stayed up late telling me about girls and guitar riffs. No. This was a man with strategy in his voice, with caution where love used to be. And what broke me wasn't that he had changed. It was that I had helped raise the man who now spoke to me like I was a step in a plan. That night, I scrolled through old texts. Photos from before Owen grilling in the backyard. Lauren holding a pie I helped bake. The dog we once had, back when she could still climb stairs. Then farther back, when Owen still used too many exclamation marks. When every message ended with love, you mom, I didn't delete everything out of spite. I deleted it because I needed the silence, to be honest. The last thing I kept was a video. Owen at 10 years old, holding a flashlight under his chin, telling a ghost story while I laughed in the background. My voice in the video sounded younger, lighter. I watched it twice, then turned off the phone, and I went to bed early, not to sleep, but to lie still in truth. I didn't cry. Not when the message ended. Not when I watched the video. Not even when I tucked the phone in the drawer and closed it softly, like placing a story I no longer needed to tell. The grief had shifted. It was no longer sharp or loud. It was quiet now. And complete. The next morning I woke up early, not because I had something to do, but because I wanted to see the lake at first light. The sky was still gray-blue, the kind of color that doesn't promise anything, but shows up anyway. I made toast. I poured orange juice. This time I drank it. It wasn't bitter, just plain, honest. I looked around the kitchen, the owl figurine, the kettle, the chair with the scratch on the leg from when Mark dropped his toolbox. These weren't just objects. They were witnesses to everything I'd lost and everything I'd chosen to keep. Later that day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter, not to Owen, not to Lauren, not even to Mark, to myself, to the woman I had been, the one who said yes too often, the one who thought silence was safer than boundaries, the one who thought love meant disappearing a little more each year. You were good, I wrote, even when no one said it. You were kind even when they forgot to be. You carried so much alone, but you carried it with grace. I folded the letter and tucked it between the pages of a book I no longer planned to finish, because some stories don't need endings. They just need release. That evening I baked a cake, just one layer, just enough for me. I lit a single candle, not to mark a birthday, not for anyone else to see, just for me. I closed my eyes, and I made a wish. Not for Owen to come back, not for time to rewind, not even for forgiveness. I wished for my own stillness, my own beginning, a life that no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. Then I opened my eyes and blew out the flame. The room didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt earned.